welcome to the third webinar by Eventful Limited. This is the third in our series of webinars since the COVID pandemic. May is the month of Mental Health Awareness Month. I didn't even know that. I didn't even realize that there was Mental Health Awareness Month. But when we were speaking about what topic to discuss this month, we've had two webinars in the past. We had the first one, which was talking about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the events business, and we had some seasoned practitioners in the event space come and talk to us. Then the second one, where we took it a little more granular, and we had practitioners in law, in insurance, in tax and health and safety, come and talk to us about what we need to do post-pandemic so that we can all begin to build our businesses to fit into that future. So as we were speaking about which one to, what topic to go into this time, somebody mentioned that, I think one of our managers said, why don't we do emotional health, mental health? And then I was reading something somewhere and I found out May is actually the Mental Health Awareness Month. So I said, well, this is absolutely the right time talk about it. And it's really, really important because we find that mental health is a much overlooked subject in our society. Even if you look at all the webinars going on right now, they're all about the impact on our business, the impact on our lives, social lives, everything, but not really talking about the mental aspect. So I think it's important that we are, going to do that today. And COVID has affected all of us in many, many different ways. I mean, we have words that in January, did we know the meaning of the word pandemic, lockdown, quarantine, virus, palliatives? These were not words that were in our local dictionary, but now everybody knows them. And honestly, we're coming with all that, of course, comes the anxiety, depression, hopelessness, fear, the worry, the insomnia, the uncertainty, all the negative things that come with this pandemic. It's been a very, very difficult time. Difficult for people in business, difficult for the workers, difficult. I mean, it's just, I don't think there's anybody in the world it has not affected negatively one way or the other. I mean, Nigerians, we're naturally expressive people. The fact that we're not able to gather together, we're not able to hug each other, we're not able to see each other, we're not able to have our numerous parties. The fact that our social life and our milestones are now confined to virtual space, it's just really, really tough for us. The fact that we're not able to go to work like we used to, we're working from home, and that comes with its own challenges, which are some of the things that Kemi is going to talk about. I mean, the problems of, people are being asked to work from home. Do they even have the electricity to power their laptops? I mean, are they spending more on diesel and on petrol than they used to? If you have a small flat with small children, the fact that you were all going away to school and, to work every day gave everybody some space, but everybody's been cooped up. It's been a very, very difficult time. I mean, business plans, people who had fantastic business ideas in January, they're looking at their papers and thinking, what is this? Where am I going? People are terrified for their lives, for their businesses. It's been a really, really interesting 3 months, I would say. I can go on and on, but it's not for me to speak. So I'm going to welcome our first speaker. And I'm going to introduce to you Dr. Otefe Edebi. I hope I pronounced Otefe correctly.
Yes, Ma, you do.
Okay, Otefe is a consultant psychiatrist and psychologist, and he's the medical director of the Grace Hill Place, one of Nigeria's indigenous leading private mental health and substance abuse treatment facilities. Otefe has over 13 years experience, which cuts across individuals, indigenous and international companies, and it provides him with extensive data he has used for research to develop mental health protocols. And he is going to actually really lay down the foundation for us of what exactly is mental health. So Tefe, you have 10 minutes to please speak to us about that.
Okay, thank you so much, Ma. Good evening, everyone. Nice to be here with us. So let me just go right into it. Mental health. Many times, when I was thinking about it, mental health, what is mental health? I did almost 7 years doing my training as a resident to become a consultant. And I suddenly realized recently that all by 6 or almost 7 years, I even didn't know what the definition of mental health was, because during residency, you are really dealing with mental illness, and you kind of mix that together. When people hear mental health, they often think about someone on the streets, is close to stone, and someone running wild and all of that. So, but when you talk about mental health doesn't really have to do with the presence or the absence of illness. It is actually one's capacity to optimize or their potential It's also your capacity to work fruitfully and productively. It's your capacity to cope with the normal stresses of life and your capacity to contribute to the community. So in summary, mental health is just your capacity to attain your full potential. It has nothing to do with mental illness. Mental illness, on the other side, has to do with, it's an umbrella word that covers all forms of illnesses that borders on three major things: your behavior, your thinking, and your mood. I often always say, to remember these three things, just think about the ATM machine. So rather than think of ATM, put a B there, you have a BTM, then you have behavior, thinking, and mood. So with mental health, you're talking about positive. With mental illness, you're talking about negative. So so you can literally be mentally healthy even though you have a mental illness, and at the same time you can have illness but still be mentally unhealthy. Just the same way somebody can have maybe you don't have diabetes, you don't have hypertension, you don't have any medical condition, but doesn't mean you are physically fit because you are not paying attention to exercise, to your nutrition and rest, even though you don't have any medical condition. So also you can be mentally healthy even though you're on medication, because as long as you are able to deal with life, go through life stressors, cope with life, be productive at work, contribute into your community, and attain your full potential. As far as that is concerned, you are mentally healthy. Now, what are some of the signs that you have to look out for? So it's like a broad spectrum from mentally healthy, which is one side of the spectrum, to mental illness, which is the other side of the spectrum. So we are all on at some point in the spectrum. And during stressful situations, we can tend to tilt towards one end or the other if we do not pay attention to ourselves. So some of the red flags you should look out for basically when it comes to mental illness is there are 4 Ds. I like to call them the 4 Ds you should always look out for. So the 4 Ds is, number one is the behavior. Remember I said mental illness has to do with behavior, thinking, and mood. So you want to look at the behavior, the thinking, and the mood. Is it dysfunctional? Is this individual's behavior beginning to affect their function or even their thoughts? So for example, if you have a pervading thought, maybe the thought that says, I have COVID, I have COVID, I have COVID, you cough, you say, nowadays coughing is an expensive gesture. You cough now, it's like, hey, everybody, yeah. So, but then it begins to affect you are checking, you are constantly checking, you are constantly calling, and it's beginning to affect how you function. Then your mental health is being you are overly worried, you are overly anxious. You would say that your mental health is tilting towards the negative. So even though you don't necessarily have a mental illness, but you need to pay attention to that. So if you're obsessive over the COVID, the numbers, and then and it's being to everybody that comes into the house, maybe the family, you are literally telling people sleep outside, don't stay near me, and all of that is affecting the functioning in the house. It's like a red flag. You need to calm down, and I guess that's some of the things we'll be talking about today. Another thing is distress. So I said there are 4 Ds. Dysfunctional, the first one. The second one is distress. Does it cause some form of stress to either you or to the people around? So if your behavior, your thinking or mood is beginning to cause some form of stress on you, then that is another red flag you should kind of look out for. The third D is called deviation, a deviant behavior. So if there's a deviation from your normal, or there's a deviation from our normal. So when I use the word our because I use when we're talking about mental health, generally, not just about COVID and the COVID situation, but if one's behavior begins to deviate from the common societal normal, one will begin. So you have behaviors have the ways people express themselves when it comes to sex and all of that, sexual orientation and all of that. When there's a deviation from the societal normal, or there's a deviation from your own normal. So let's say the person has always been a high flyer, doing well maybe in their studies, doing well in the workplace, and suddenly there's a decline in their functioning. There's a deviation from maybe the person used to be well, properly kept, will pay attention to their hygiene. And then there's a deviation from that the person, there's a decline in personal hygiene. There's a deviation from maybe the way the person normally talks or the way you are expected to talk. We are saying A, you are going to B, and you know, once there's a deviation either from your normal or the societal normal, that's another red flag. And the last and the final D that it's called the 4 Ds of abnormality that you need to look out for red flags is something called, is it dangerous? Is this behavior? Is this thinking? And is this mood? Has it become a dangerous thing? So, and we're going to be talking about things like domestic abuse. So if you have a partner or you yourself, and your behavior or your thinking is becoming dangerous, you know, for example, when you talk about thinking, when you start thinking about harming somebody else, or you start thinking about harming yourself, you feel overwhelmed. You know, the other day, a doctor, I think that somewhere in the US was on news, took her life because of the fact that many people were dying due to COVID. So when your thinking begins to become dangerous and you are going on a dangerous path with your thoughts, or even your mood begins to pull you down a particular place, you are becoming really moody and you're feeling extremely scared of the future, extremely scared of your health and all of that. That's another red flag. So that's just laying the foundation. Mental health and mental illness a bit different. You know, you can be mentally healthy, yet you can be mentally healthy even though you have a mental illness, and you can be mentally unhealthy even though you don't have a diagnosed mental illness. That's all for me for now.
Wow, that's really deep. So you can be mentally healthy but have a mental illness.
Yeah.
However, you can also be mentally ill and not mentally healthy, and be mentally healthy.
I mean, you can be fit without a mental illness,
okay,
and yet be mentally unhealthy.
Okay. You also said you were going to talk about some common mental illnesses. What are the illnesses that we find?
Okay, so some of the common mental illnesses, the commonest is depression. Now, depression is the commonest and mental illness. Even though many people often, sometimes when I'm having a conversation with people, they ask me questions like, so doctor, when would depression lead to mental illness? And then I tell them, well, it's not leading to mental illness. You're already there. It's not leading you anywhere. You're already it's part of mental illness. And then you have anxiety too. Anxiety disorders. There are basically 3 types of anxiety disorders. Basically 3 types. Or there are more, but basically 3 types. So you have generalized anxiety, where people tend to worry about anything and everything. You know, you hear people say things like, that person can worry for Africa. You know, it's either you're worrying for your health today, or you're worrying about your job, or you're worrying about your future, you're worrying about your kids. You are constantly worrying. It's almost like they give you the assignment to help us to think for all of us. You know, you're constantly worried. Then you have specific anxieties that are referred to as phobias. So you have some people afraid, they may have fear of flying, they may have fear of this, fear of death, fear of closed spaces. Those are specific phobias. Then you also have panic attacks. That's also quite common. People often experience panic attacks and they often think they are experiencing a heart attack. Then another very common mental illness is something that is called somatoform disorder. Now, it's a big name, but soma means body. And then those days it used to be called psychosomatic illness. Now, quite a number of people somatize. Somatize means that you are having issues, but the main issue is coming from stress. But you are presenting at the hospital with, maybe I have headache, it feels like my head is piercing, it feels like something is moving my body, to seeking help, but they are somatizing their illness. They have complaints, physical complaints, but the illness is coming from their mind. Then you also have substance abuse, quite common. I'm really focusing on illnesses that are common, but they are common in society. People don't often present with them. Nobody goes to So it's not something, someone who has a somatic illness will likely go to a general practitioner. It's not likely going to go to a psychiatrist. You often have the person being diagnosed for malaria and typhoid almost constantly, always being treated for that. But it may just be a somatic illness. And then, so substance abuse is quite common. A lot of people struggle with that, and they're at various phases of the spectrum. Some people are currently abusing, some people have become dependent. Then there are also some more severe mental illnesses, the ones that people readily identify as mental illnesses. This first three that I've mentioned, many people don't identify them as mental illnesses. They often go undiagnosed. And so you have the bipolar affective disorder. With as the name implies, bipole, you have two poles, and you have a pole of mania where the person is overly excited, talking a lot, is not sleeping well, feels like he owns the entire world, or is a special prophet, or has a special message for the world, has a special, is the special one, and spending excessively. Those are manic symptoms that you see. And then the person sometimes may become overly religious. That's what happens in bipolar. Then you have the one that I would put it kind of stands right top there. It's common, but it's the one people are often readily identify. Like there's definitely something wrong. It's something called schizophrenia. It's a form of psychosis, and psychosis just simply means to lose touch with reality. So, and it can present it with oddity of behavior. The person acting funny, so you may hear things like, put off all the lights, they are watching us, the neighbors can hear us, don't talk too loudly, and all of that. So there are oddity of behaviors. And then you see things like delusion. So the person holds on to a belief that is unfounded, they're after us, those kind of talks. Then you could also, the person could also experience something called hallucinations. So to hallucinate just means to have an experience in any of the five senses: your hearing, your seeing, your taste, your smell, your feeling, having any sensation that is not actually going on at that moment. So
okay, doctor, well, I just need to cut you short. I'm sorry to cut you short there. Yes, you've given
no problem.
But it's amazing because the first few ones you mentioned are things that I can identify, probably maybe myself or many people around me who would think that anxiety, being anxious about things, being anxious about your children, say, or your own welfare, or, I have many friends who have real flying phobias. They've got to take medication and pray and all that before they go on flights. So it's interesting that those are actually classified as a mental illness. But I know that, you've gone all the way down to the very interesting. Thank you. So we're now going to go on to Mr. Olumide Okeowo. Dr. Debbie has laid the foundation, explaining to us the difference between mental health and wellness, and also taking us through the various types of mental illness. So Olumide he's a clinical psychologist at the Lagos University Teaching Hospital. Olumide has over 16 years experience spanning human resources, management, consulting, and he brings his wealth of experience, in the corporate world to the impact of COVID-19 on the mental wellness of those in the corporate world, professionals. How does it affect them? Olumide, we're looking forward to hearing from you. So you've got 10 minutes to share that with us.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Olumide Okeowo is my name, as Mrs. Z has rightly said. Thank you, Mrs. Z, for the opportunity to be here. And thank you, Doctor, for taking us through, breaking mental health down. Now, is talked about. We need to then see what has it affected now. Now that we are in this pandemic, if someone had told you 6 months ago that there was going to be a lockdown, or there was going to be everybody not being able to move freely, or have to sit down at home and all of that, I'm sure you will say that can't be true. That's not going to work and all of that. But here we are now, this time around, and we found ourselves in this situation. Now, so I just want to talk briefly about how COVID-19 then will be impacting on people. Now, the first thing that comes to mind is that for COVID-19 now, there are a lot of things that is going to impact, but the major one that is coming through is the fear of the unknown. So many people are worried about what is going to happen to my job. You know, where I'm working is not somewhere that is not a big place. And now we've been home for 3 months. I've been told that we have to pay has to be cut and all of that. So people are afraid for a lot of things. The doctor mentioned that, you know, anxiety, people will panic and all of that. That is going to come to play in the COVID-19 era. People are afraid for their jobs. People are afraid for their health. Even the health workers. I mean, some have contacted the COVID-19 by relating with the patient and all of that. And they're afraid that when I go back to work, will I be able to cope? So there's a lot of fear around, you know, the job people are having or not having. Employment rate is supposed to rise up to about above 30%. And so the thought of that alone will make people just want to panic and lose their minds and all of that. But this is not the time not to do that. And this is the time also to begin to prepare. So now we look at that in terms of your fear of the unknown related to your job, related to family, related to how you are relating. Some people have found themselves that they're at home now. They're having to be working at home. They're not used to that. They're used to going to the office. They're used to talking to their colleagues. Now they have been told that you have to work. And work has started to change. Some people are used to 8 to 6. Now you are having to be forced to work at odd hours. And, you know, you have to attend meetings endlessly. And some people are not able to cope. So those are some of the things that are impacting, you know, this period in the way people are reasoning to be able to settle in with this. So I would also like to explain what is happening that people need to understand. Now, so when you say fear of the unknown, majorly around every other thing that might be affecting everyone. Now, there is what the major underlying theme there is change. Now, we have been introduced to a change, perhaps first change. It's not a change we have asked for, but we have been forced into this change. Now, so there's a process of change that people would have to walk into and, you know, be guided into. Now, so there is a change process by there's someone that is called Kubler-Ross that talked about change process, and that's, you know, something that happens with change management. I mean, a lot of corporations, a lot of businesses go through change management. Maybe they're changing, they're merging with another company or something. There's a change process that goes on, and people are taking through that change process in their organizations. The same way we have to go through this change. Now, when a change happens, just like COVID-19 has happened and is our reality now, is that the first thing that would happen is that people will experience shock. And when I say shock, is that there is the place where people will deny it. There's no COVID. There's no COVID around. Government is just using it to make money. And, you know, so they are denying the fact that, okay, this thing is around. People are already being infected by the virus. Not only ordinary citizens or your colleague or the health workers themselves are going down and, you know, being treated. Now, that is the first stage. People will get into a state where they are shocked. You feel the numbness. They don't want to go to work. They don't want to do any other thing. That's the shock, and that's a state of denial. Now, after that state of denial, and, you know, they are getting to warm up to the reality that this has actually happened. Now, they get to the place where, which I've mentioned earlier, is just that place where the fear that the doctor was explaining, you know, those kind of fear, that panic attack where you will feel you are breathless, your heart is palpitating, You are thinking that if I go out, will I not contact this COVID? If I go to work, if my colleague has it, how would I be able to cope? Will I be able to work? And you are numb. You are not able to even do the work that you have gone to the office to do. Now, so that fear stage, happens. Then to move away from that fear stage, you have to get to the stage where people are then being allowed to express, their fears. So, for instance, in the office space, now that also is going to change, because you have to understand what people are going through. You have to understand what exactly is happening to them at this situation. Otherwise, you will find out that there's some people that will not be able to respond very well to the fear and the shock that they are experiencing, and you might not get the best out of them. They might not be productive enough for you to be able to get what you were getting from them before. So now it will be an opportunity for the business to either introduce a way to hear people out in such a way that they are able to interact and be able to talk about the things that they are going through, and then help them to realize that, okay, that someone is going to listen, someone is going to hear what they are afraid of, and be able to, lead them to a place where they can get help if it's not the office that can help them. Then they will get to that point where there is transformation. Now that's where we all want to be. And that's what we're looking at post-COVID. As where we are now, I mean, there's still a lot of things going on, and we don't even know when this is going to end. So the transformation will then be that people are aware that, oh, this has happened. How am I going to cope? Remember that where we are now, nobody has ever experienced it, at least the generation that we are now. Nobody has experienced this kind of pandemic or health crisis, public health crisis before. So we're all learning, and the researches that are going on are even things that will be improved over time, just the same way HIV had a long time to go through, the same way Ebola is going. Now it is COVID-19. So that is the way the transitioning will help us to begin to learn the new ways of going to work, going to be able to work from home. And that's even another area that is going to be very interesting. Now, the doctor also mentioned, phobias as a type of anxiety. Some people are scared of closed places. Now they are at home. They are forced into a corner, to work and all of that. They are not going to be seeing people. They probably would have to create a small room if you don't have a study to find a place to relate and be able to work in the office. So all of those things will affect people, and people respond differently based on their emotional stability. So those are the things that we're grappling with. So how would you be able to cope in this kind of situation now that all of this is coming out, is happening, and we're all experiencing it? Now, this is the time when we all need to have a lot of information about COVID-19 and all the other things around it. This is the time when we also need to begin to know that there is a change, and we now have to learn how to adjust to the new changes. For instance, in the office, we've mentioned that, I've just mentioned that, okay, we're not everybody would have to be going into the office space. Some people would have to work from home. Now, how does that pan out? How are you disciplined enough to be able to schedule your time to make sure that for the time you are supposed to be in the office, you're doing that which you're supposed to do? Because some people, if they don't do that, if they are not able to schedule their timing and they are not doing what they're supposed to do in the office, they will feel guilty. And when they feel guilty, that might lead to another emotional crisis. You go guilt tripping, not, oh, okay, I didn't do what I'm supposed to do today and all of that. It will affect productivity. So now, one of the things we would have to learn in terms of the change management is how to schedule and plan our time. If you are not working from the office, if you are going into the office, how do you plan your time? Some offices are saying that now you have to, not everybody will be able to come in. People will have to come in a particular number per time. And so there are a lot of things going on. Organizations are thinking of pay cuts instead of throwing people out of their jobs. So there are a lot of bargaining and re-strategizing going on. Different, financial plan that has been made will have to be reviewed, and people have to have that information, have to begin to plan that, okay, this time has changed. And then they need to, and another area we also need to look at, you have to begin to get some support. Now is the time that, you have to build relationships. And so that if you are not feeling the same way you used to feel emotionally, you can talk to someone. If it's in the workspace, I believe now workspaces will then have to be creating an environment where people can talk, where people can relate to the situation that is happening to them and as it relates to their productivity.
Yeah, thank you very much, Olumide. I think you're absolutely right, because for people in whether in business or the professions, the greatest anxiety is really the fear of the unknown, fear of fear for their jobs, fear for job security. A lot of people, no matter whether you're in a one-man business or you're in a multinational, everybody has that distinct fear of their job security. But I like what you said about the change. You said that for the reaction to this pandemic is you start from a state of shock. From the shock, you go into fear. And then from fear, if you're given the opportunity to express those fears, you come to a place of reality where you begin to understand that, well, this is real, this is what is happening. And then an acceptance. And from acceptance to transformation. So where we're all hoping to go through these changes is to transformation. But I'm glad you mentioned the fact that it takes adjustment. So, people need to get their heads around having to adjust to this, as they say, the new normal. I mean, I went into a supermarket earlier today, and you should have seen all of us with our face masks, some of us with our gloves trying to pick things, everybody trying to stand, a little bit away from each other. And it's an adjustment, but you're getting used to going to places and seeing everybody. I mean, when you see even people on TV, high political holders, heads of governments, everybody's on face masks. So it's the adjusting and then the eventual transformation. So I think that's very useful in laying the foundation for how this pandemic has affected people in business and how they can cope with it. I'm going to move on to Bimbo, but I can't find her. Bimbo, we need to put your video on. So Olumide, could you please mute your phone? Bimbo, are you there? Yeah, Bimbo, you're there, but we're not seeing you.
Okay,
Great.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So let me introduce Bimbo, who is our third panelist. Bimbo is a lawyer. She's an educator, a writer, a family life advocate, and a counselor. She is the founder and director of Bimbo Family Affairs Support Center and has the uncommon ability to stir up positive energy in individuals through a sequence of support, indoctrinations, mental, emotional, and self-discovery. So Bimbo is going to talk to us about the softer side. We've heard the doctors, we've heard the clinical psychologists, and she's going to talk to us about the coping mechanisms. We've heard everything about what the types of mental illnesses are. Olumide has spoken about the change process we need to go through. But how do we cope? Because one of the last things he said is that, a lot of workplaces is going to have to help people to find professionals they can talk to if you're not able to find a peer group or family group. So Bimbo, explain to us, how do we cope with all these major adjustments in our lives?
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mrs. Zacchaeus, for this opportunity. First of all, I would like to say congratulations to everybody listening to this program. Why? Because we're alive. So there's hope. Once we're alive, there's hope. And the fact that we're joining this program, it means that we need to hold on to that hope, that we believe that tomorrow will be a better day. I'm going to paint a scenario for all of us at this point in time. What I need to reiterate with all of us is that at this time, not everybody would be able to cope the same way. People cope in different ways. And even though we can't control the things that happen to us, we can actually control how we respond to the things that happen to us. So let's imagine that all of us are on a plane. We're on a plane, and 2 hours, 3 hours on the plane, there's a form of turbulence. There's everybody's feeling frantic, and you just decide that you're not comfortable, you're looking around you, some people are screaming, some people are throwing up. The person next to you is very calm and sleeping. And you wonder, what's happening? What's happening to my life? Is this death? Oh, I forgot to say thank you to my parents. I forgot to say bye-bye to my wife. You know, you start to bargain with God that if this goes on well and I don't die or nothing happens to me, I promise I will do this. I promise I will do that. Then the lights come on and you have to fasten your seat belt. Then you look at the cabin crew. They tell you it's fine, it's okay. Then suddenly the pilot comes on and says, this is your captain, Abimbola Shomole speaking. There's a bit of turbulence at this moment, but we'll be fine. We're going to have to go down a bit. The pressure is going to come down. Please wear your face mask, wear your oxygen mask, and wear your life jacket. And you wonder, okay, the pilot is very calm. He's talking to you in a very calm manner. So it gives you a bit of hope. So always listen to the professionals. So because he said that now, you're very calm, you're thinking to yourself, this I have no control over. So I need to act based on the information I'm given. So you wear your oxygen mask and you wear your life jacket. And he comes back on air and says, we've got clearance that we can actually come down at eventful location. So what it's going to tell us is that we're going to brace up for impact. That means things are going to happen that are going to affect us. But how do we cope? So basically, those are the things I'm going to share with us this evening. What it is, again, is that once we find that we get to a stage that a lot of things are happening, we have to readjust. We have to strike a balance within our mind that this too shall pass. This is something that has come, it is here, and we've been at home for almost 9 weeks now, so it's not going anywhere. So all the things that they told us to do, wash our hands, social distancing and everything, as the professionals have said, is what we need to do. Maintain daily routine. The psychologist has told us that you have to have a routine. You have to do something that you are looking forward to doing every day. You have to restrict media and social media. You know, what you hear affects what you think about, affects your feelings, affects your behavior. And acknowledge your feelings. That is where we come in. You have to be able to express yourself and say, I am not feeling right. I'm not feeling happy. I have a bit of anxiety. Normally we ask ourselves, how are you today? And everybody says, fine. Maybe we need to change that and say, how are you feeling? I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling sad. I don't know what is going on in me. So you have to learn how to express yourself. Find things that make you happy. Maybe you want to watch a movie, you want to go outside. The other day, while I was in the house, I looked outside and I saw a woman and her daughter playing in the rain. Maybe that was a form of detox for them. It was a very nice sight to behold. Find what happens, what you need to do when you're feeling stressed, what you need to do at that point in time. Then your relationship is very, very important. Who do you need to communicate with? Your family, your parents, your children. Make sure that there's somebody you're talking to, people that you need to connect with. And also make sure that you don't get involved in things that would make you feel frantic. Some of us, we have coping mechanism where we just want to drink or we want to just sleep and not be part of social activities and being kept in a place and being alone. You can't afford to be alone. This is not the time to be alone. This is the time to connect and communicate with people. There are times you want to feel isolated. No, this is a time of collaboration also. And also remember to take your medication. If you have issues with your health, make sure that consistently you take your medication. Find sleep. And why am I saying find sleep? Some of us cannot sleep. We have insomnia. We can't even sleep. We feel very uncomfortable. And what it is that even though we're supposed to sleep in the night, no, find what works for you. If it's in the afternoon you want to sleep, make sure you sleep well. So in the night you can do your work and do your whatever you need to do. Make sure you find out what works for you. What works for A might not work for B. And learn how to relax. Some of us cannot go jogging. If you cannot jog, walk. If you cannot walk, go out in the sun. If you cannot go out in the sun, make sure you open your curtains. Make sure there's bright light coming into your space, because you don't want to be in the dark. You don't want to feel lonely. And journal, write things down. You know, the other day I was watching, I don't know, people that watch American Idols, there was a man that was charged for a crime that he did not commit, and he was in jail for 37 years. He came out last year and is in American Idols now today, 1 year after. And he said, I was in prison, right? But my mind was not in prison. Make sure you feed your mind with positive things. The music you hear, the people you hear talk to you, the messages you hear. So make sure your mind is free of toxic information. It's very, very important. And also your spirituality. Make sure that you have time to connect to your God, or connect to that.
Lost her. Oh dear, and we're really enjoying that. I'm sure she'll come back in a minute, but just while I'm sure she's going to rejoin us, just to
being that keeps you motivated. And if you cannot, make sure you listen to motivational, motivate you, and be thankful for the things, different opportunities where they just want to be. They will have times that they just want to be alone. Make sure that they're not alone all the time. Some of them will start pulling their hair from their scalp. Some of them might start to bed wet. But these are feelings of how they're feeling. So whatever you do has to be positive around children. They react in different ways. Now, there are people around this time are very vulnerable. People that have physical challenges, people that are old and aged, people that pregnant women, people that single parents too might have a bit of challenge at this time. Young people, children and adolescents also might have a bit of challenges at this time. So at times, it's not about you. It's about even finding time to connect with people that are going through more challenges than what you are facing at the moment. Because once we overwhelm ourselves with problems, we focus on that. But by the time you give time to other people, you know, spreading your love or encouragement, phone call, or being part of a community, supporting financially or different ways, then the focus moves away from you, and you'll see yourself as giving your time to people. So the focus will not be on you. You have to have that survival instinct that this will pass, this will go away. This is something that has come, but it will go, because there are plans. Start to think of whatever it is that you put in the closet before, thinking that I have time to do this. No, there's no more time for that. Bring it out. Dust your cupboard. Everything that is like a toxic in your house. Maybe you have too many clothes in your cupboard or things like that. Give it away. It's time for you to start to give time, resources, and things like that, so that the focus will not be on yourself. And the people in the front line too, I want to commend them, because this time they are going through different things. So maybe a phone call, or when you see a nurse or a doctor, just kudos, well done. We're very proud of you. Thank you for all that you do. And your parents, make sure you speak to them and communicate with them. Now, there are 4-5 people around this time that you need in your network, because everybody has to have a network at this time. Your social network, your family network, your friend network, or whatever network you need that support. The first person is a friend. A friend is somebody that will always be there for you, that will not judge you. The person that sees your deep desires and also connects, communicates, and gets assurance and supports you during your successes and your anxieties. The second person that you need is a cheerleader. A cheerleader is somebody that would always tell you that you are okay, go on, even if you don't have hope, even if you've lost hope. That cheerleader will continue to tell you that go on, I believe in you and I trust you. Then you need a coach. A coach is somebody that identifies your strength, even if you don't identify it. The coach identifies your strength, pulls you out of your comfort zone to maximize your strength. Then you need a mentor. It could be a spiritual mentor, a financial mentor, a career mentor, academic mentor, whatever it is. That mentor is the person that has important information that the person wants to share with you, that will help you to point you to the right place. And most importantly, you need a counselor. A counselor has the attributes of the 4 people that I said. We are professionals. What do? We have a searchlight, and we use it to navigate and support people in knowing how to navigate their lives through challenges. That's what we do. And to round up, I will share this quote to you, our viewers. There are far too many silent sufferers, not because they don't yearn to reach out, but because they've tried and found no one who cares. By Rachel Goldridge. At Bimbo Families Affairs Support Center, we care. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bimbo. That was delivered with so much passion. And, the first thing you said is that people, one of the greatest coping mechanisms at this time is that people must express themselves. And you have expressed yourself very clearly. So we need to express ourselves. We need to ask people, not how are you, but how are you feeling? I know that a lot of people, especially during the actual lockdown, we got a lot of phone calls. We also at events were like, look, call your clients, just make sure, particularly the brides and people who had milestone events that had to be postponed or to be cancelled. So we made sure we called people, and that's really important. You've said people must seek help. We need to understand, and I think more and more people realize that seeking help for emotional and mental issues is nothing to be stigmatized. It's actually absolutely normal. And you've said we need to relax, and whatever relaxing is to you, if relaxing is jogging, if it's walking, if it's swimming, if it's just connecting with people virtually, whatever it is, find a way to relax. You talked about journaling. I think journaling is great. I mean, I'm sure we're going to have many lockdown diaries after this, that people will turn into series or into movies of what I did during the lockdown. So it's really, really important that you free your mind, you said, of toxic information. And I said there was something Olumide said that I was going to say I disagree with him when he said, get all the information you need on COVID. No, because at the first, when it first happened, that was what we were all doing. Everybody was sitting in front of CNN and Sky and channels and just learning everything and reading everything. But after a while, I just decided I don't even want to know, because the more you know, the more the fear is setting in. So I think if you know your level of your emotional level, and you really can't take that level of information, I think it's best to quietly free yourself of too much information overload. Spirituality is key. Everybody must remain connected to whoever they perceive their God to be. Very, very important. And to keep motivated, just keep looking forward to the future. What is going to happen? What are the things? I mean, look at post-COVID. As you said, this too will pass. The survival instinct, this too will pass, and I will be part of it. I will be part of those that will pass into the air, that will cross over, as we say, and give help. And I think helping people, that has really come out a lot in this season. I mean, during that time of the lockdown, you found people just doing things in their neighborhood, getting food to people, looking after the underprivileged. I think it reminded us of who we really are, because I think our lives had all become such a rat race that nobody really cared for their brother. We became our brother's keepers again. So I think that has been fantastic. And of course, you mentioned network. Your friends, your cheerleaders, your coach, your mentor, and your counselors. I think that's been amazing. I am sure a lot of people would have taken notes on, laying the foundation for the coping mechanisms at this time of emotional turmoil for us all. So we come to our last, but definitely not our least speaker. My fave, I call her, Dr. Kemi Da Silva Ibru. Dr. Da Silva Ibru is a consultant specialist of obstetrics. Oh, I can never say that word. Obstetrician and gynecologist. And she's also the founder of WARIF, which stands for Women at Risk International Foundation. Kemi has 15 years experience in medical practice, and that extends also to public health. WARIF tackles the issue of gender-based violence, rape, and trafficking of young girls and women in communities in Nigeria. Kemi is extremely passionate and committed to this cause. I mean, I've been to her center, I've seen her work, I've heard her speak, and she really is one of my most, inspirational women. And Kemi is going to talk to us about what she calls the shadow pandemic. In the midst of this pandemic, when everybody was talking just about disease, there was a shadow pandemic of gender violence going on. And Kemi, you have the floor for the next 10 to 12 minutes, please. Thank you.
Let me start by saying thank you very much, Mrs. V, for having me on and for organizing this wonderful webinar. With regard to gender-based violence and the pandemic, I will start with some context. So with the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a mandatory precautionary measure of confining people to their homes to slow the spread of the virus. And globally, approximately 90 countries have complied. So about 2.6 billion people were confined in their homes to slow the spread. As a result of this, however, what we then started to notice was a shadow pandemic that had become apparent. There was an increase in the number of cases of sexual and gender-based violence against women, against girls, and against children. As a result of many of these affected groups isolated now in their homes with their abusers. We had scenarios where there was historical evidence of abuse in the home, and so it was more of an opportunistic situation. You have the woman trapped at home, and therefore her spouse, who typically would be the alleged abuser, would then take advantage of that situation. Then we were seeing more and more new cases, because we have a situation now where we have a heightened security concern, we have a heightened health concern, and then we have people generally worried about their economic security. And again, they are now in this volatile environment, many a time with their partners, and this sadly leads to more cases of abuse. Prior to the pandemic, domestic and sexual violence was already one of the largest concerns, in my opinion, that we had globally. We were looking at almost 250 million women between the ages of 15 and 49 being affected. If we bring it home and we talk about Nigeria, 1 in 4 girls in Nigeria before the age of 18 would have experienced at least one violent sexual encounter. And 70% of them would have had more than one. And of all of these women affected, only 3.5% receive any services or assistance. If we expand this age bracket to include older women up to the age of 49, we're looking at 1 in 14 women that's affected by sexual or gender-based violence. So as this COVID-19 continues, the numbers are likely to grow, both globally and at home. There are indications that we should anticipate a 20% surge in the number of cases. This would mean that for every 3 months of a lockdown scenario, we're anticipating 15 million more cases of domestic abuse than normal. In Nigeria, we're yet to collate data. It's an ongoing event. At the WARIF organization, we've already started putting together the data from our 24-hour confidential helpline. We have had a 64% spike in the number of calls in 2 weeks into the lockdown, and 72% of these calls were from women. When we opened the WARIF Rape Crisis Center, because we had to stay open in spite of the lockdown, by the 4th day of opening, we'd already seen 8 cases, in spite of the fact that women, children, and generally the population in Lagos, at any rate, were encouraged not to move around. If we're to look at the trends as it relates to the adverse psychosocial impact, because we're talking about the mental health and how this affects at least my patient population, we're noticing an increased number of cases in anxiety, cases of depression, certainly more suicidal ideation or attempts. We're seeing more and more cases of post-traumatic stress disorders. And these are women that have had historical acts of abuse. They're now placed in environments where there's triggers all around them. And so more and more they're experiencing these disorders. It certainly is leading to a loss of number of days at work, in spite of the fact that majority of us are working remotely. And this certainly would lead to a loss of earnings. So this certainly impacts on her productivity in her workplace. When we look at the issues and the impacts on the sexual and reproductive health, we're seeing more and more new cases of HIV. We're anticipating, again, more cases of unwanted pregnancies, because of course, traditionally, when you have acts of violence perpetrated against women, it's usually unprotected. And then, of course, we look at the trends when it comes to the gender implication of education. As it is, when we look at sub-Saharan Africa, already 9.5 million girls will never set foot in a classroom, as compared with 5 million boys. And so now you have an environment where young girls have been asked to return home. because many of the schools have been closed as a result of the pandemic. This increases the risk of child sexual abuse, which tends to occur again when you have an isolated environment. But also you are now affecting the available opportunities for education of these girls, because girls traditionally are the ones that would care for children as caregivers and would certainly care for the sick and the elderly at home. And then finally, when I talk about this, I always mention the economic trends. Already globally, the cost of violence against women is $1.5 trillion globally. And this is a number that, again, we expect to increase because we're certainly anticipating, and it's already happening, economic support and stimulus packages made available to many of the women that are at risk. The other aspect that I would like to touch on before my 10 minutes is up is if you are at risk, or say for instance, you're aware of a woman who you suspect is at risk, what can you say to her? What's available? What is anything that you can lend as advice to her? I think the very first thing you have to appreciate is that all the essential services that are available have been scaled back. And so unfortunately, in this environment, for example, we have very limited shelters and accommodations that are open. The very few that are open insist on a COVID-19 negative test. Now, as many of us are probably aware, the testing centers in Lagos insist on some symptom or sign to suggest that you're unwell before they carry out a test on you. And many of these women are asymptomatic, meaning they don't have any visible symptoms of an infection. And so unfortunately, they're not qualified to meet this criteria and cannot get this test. So if you have a woman that you suspect that is in a home of violence, she needs to understand that she has to have a safety plan or measure in place. She has to identify a neighbor, a friend, that she can call on for assistance. She has to have a 24-hour confidential helpline, such as the Warwick helpline or any other helplines on speed dial. So she can access this whenever she feels that danger might be imminent. She needs to make sure she has a bag packed. She needs to ensure that she has some money put aside, and this will be unbeknownst to the alleged abuser in the house. And then she needs to understand that it's not going to get any better, because unfortunately the pandemic as we know it is here to stay. This is indeed no longer a new normal. This is going to be our normal. So she has to put in place these measures as quickly as possible. At the organization that I run, what we've been able to do is create a safe space at the Warwick Rape Crisis Center. We've ensured that we remain open. We've ensured that we are protected with the necessary personal protective equipment, and so that we can also prevent the transfer of the infection into the community. And if you ask me, what can the private sector do in general to assist women at risk and women that are in these situations? I would say that, again, we're very much aware of the fact that the majority of us are working remotely. And so corporations and organizations have to recognize that they have to put in place service referrals for women in this situation. They have to create support groups, and they have to use whatever accessible formats that they have in their organizations to offer access to care for these women. If you're looking at the media outlets in the private sector, we need to continue to raise the visibility of this increased violence against women and demonstrate the risk factors so that women are aware. It's all about advocacy, it's all about awareness, it's all about information. We need to also leverage off technology as we've been doing. I mean, this is a fantastic example with this Zoom webinar. We need to leverage off telecommunications. We need to ask telecommunications different groups to please offer free calls to these women. And also, finally, we need to be our sister and our brother's keepers. We need to ask those difficult questions. We all have a suspected friend or family member, and many a time we're embarrassed to ask the questions. But now more than ever, those questions about their well-being need to be asked. Thank you.
Wow. Well, before I even say anything, can you just give us the Warwick helpline? Please just say it. The wife helpline, can we?
Our confidential helpline is 0809 210 0009. I'll repeat that. It's 0809 210 0009.
Thank you. I'm going to repeat it again. 0809 210 009. Bimbola, can you give us your counseling number as well, please? Just before I forget. Bimbola, people who may want to come to you for counseling.
It's 0803 306 4991. That's for WhatsApp messages. Okay. Then the one for the phone call is 0833 795 5892. And they can send the private messages via email to bimbo@bimbofamilyaffairs.com.
WhatsApp is 0803 306 4991 and 0803 37. No, this seems like too many numbers. Can you repeat the second number? I don't think I have it right. The one that's not the WhatsApp. Bimbo.
0813 795 5892.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Before I summarize what Dr. Da Silva Ibru shared, I just want to say to people, if you want to ask questions, could you please put your questions in the Q&A and not the chat, because we're going to go to the Q&A now. Honestly, Kemi, anytime I hear you speak, I just think, we don't even know the half of what is going on. You have given us some shocking statistics. The fact that we have a 20% surge in the number of cases, and that in 3 months, we're talking about 15 million more, and then a 64% spike in numbers, and then that 1 in 4 women before the age of 18 will have one violent sexual encounter. That is extremely terrifying. So, we cannot even give you enough time on all these kind of platforms so that we can really get this message out. You've spoken about anxiety, depression, suicidal attempts, and of course, clearly, this will impact productivity in any woman who is working. HIV, I thought, was on the going down, but you're telling me now that you're seeing more cases of HIV. I didn't even know that. I was shocked to hear that. And of course, the closure of the schools and the impact on the child sexual abuse. During the lockdown, something happened. A friend of mine who lives in England, you will not believe, called and said to me that her sister-in-law in Canada had said that, is there anybody she knows in Ibadan? Because her friend in Ibadan had called this friend in Canada to say her husband is, really beating her up, and had sent photographs of everything. So my friend in London now calls me in Lagos. I now have to get a friend and sister in Ibadan and gave her all the details. So can you imagine that extremely convoluted scenario? But that was the only way this lady could get help. And I like the things you've said. Everybody, you must identify a neighbor or a friend. But something somebody said to me is also that it's good to have like a password. So if you phone and say, I need to go to the supermarket, and you say that to your friend, she knows that you mean that there's trouble in the house, because you're not going, he's going to be right there behind you, so you're not going to be able to say, he's beating me up right now. So establish a code with that friend. As she said, have your backpack and your money put aside. And we need to beg women, please, 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 only a woman that is alive can have a marriage. So if you are being abused, your life is in danger, you need to run, you need to seek help. And it's really, really important. And of course, you've mentioned, Kemi, how the private sector can help. So I think we've had a really great session with everybody speaking to their own strengths. And it's given us a very robust outlook to this issue of mental health and the impact COVID-19 has had on it. So we have some questions here, and as I will just ask whoever I ask, please remember to unmute your mic and ask the question. So I have Uche asking, and I think I'll take that to Dr. Edebi. Is mental health genetic? You need to unmute yourself.
Yes, it is. So we say there are 3 major things we look at. We look at biological issues, psychological issues, and social issues. They all kind of come together to create a possible, someone having a possible mental illness. So in terms of the biological issues, you talk about things like genetic factors and all of that. So that's a yes.
Okay. Basala also asked, having engaged with different millennials at different points, we've come to certain deductions. So I assume Basala is a millennial, that parents have contributed to the current state of mental health and orientation of the younger generation. What do the professionals have to say to this? So, Olumide, would you like to answer that? Do you think that it's the parents have contributed to the current state of mental health and orientation of the younger generation?
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Z. And thank you for that question, Busala. Well, it comes in both ways. Now, if you understand that a millennia now, from an adolescent to a young adult now, is that they, apart from the changes coming with COVID-19, they seem to have a set of ways in which they do things. Technology has aided them to change their own lifestyle. Now, if you also consider that these people, they spend more time in high school and in their college, and they are more related to their peers than their parents. Now, so it's very easy to then assume that they spend more time with their peers. Okay, so now for every time they're at home, you see that it's a struggle between themselves and their parents in terms of, okay, I want to do this, you can't do this, this is not what is right. Now the thing is, parents first of all must understand that there is a change, not the COVID-19 change. There is a change in the way different groups have responded to the world. The millennials are different. They are more technology inclined. You see them with gadgets and all of that, and help them maintain, not spending all of their time. But parents also need to understand the generational teams that they have, that they would not be the kind of people who would go outside and play like it used to be in those days. They like to be on laptop, they like to be on that. So you, not necessarily that parents are the ones that are affecting the millennials, is that the parents to understand the millennials, and the millennials also to relate to the fact that you cannot always have your way. You can't have your way because your parents also are set in their ways. So if they bend a bit, you also need to bend. Otherwise, you will find out that millennials are not going to talk, and you'll find out that they would do things that would affect themselves and their parents. A case in point is one of the people I was talking to at some point. He was not happy with the fact that parents don't give him time. And you know what he did was that he started engaging with his friends, and they led him into substance use. And he was using marijuana and all of that, and he got hooked on it. And when we started talking, and the first thing he said was that he wanted to get his parents' attention. And in the end, he was able to get the parents' attention, but not in a good way. Because at that time, parents were the ones, everybody was running helter-skelter. Oh, what can we do? And substance takes a long time to resolve, and is dependent on the individual. So I say it's both ways.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Bimbo, I'll throw this to you. How do you cope with a family member that is making you depressed in the period and you are alone with that person? So how do you cope? That's from Praise. How do you cope with a family member that is making you depressed and yet you're alone with that person? So how do you cope with that?
Okay, well, there has to be an outlet for you. And when I say outlet, there has to be something that you will do on your own. Like I said earlier, you have to wear your face masks and you have to wear your life jacket. What is it that you can do that will keep you going, that will make you go, stay in your own space and find that inner joy? Because you can't control that person, but you can control what happens to you. So most times when that happens, move away from that person that's giving you the negative vibes and find things that will block your mind from the vibes the person is giving to you. Whatever it is that you need to do that would give you that inner joy, that inner peace. Even when the person is around you, that is what is very, very important. Some people, in their own quiet moment, just like when you have your headphones on, you just go to your corner, go and listen to your music, or go for a walk, or make sure you're on the phone talking to somebody and laughing it out. Those are the things I would advise that you do. What will work for you, what will give you joy, and putting that person out of how you feel. It's very, very important. That's what I would advise you to. Find your own coping skill in the midst of that person.
Yeah, at least I don't think the indication was not that the person was violent, just that that person makes you depressed. So I think that's an excellent answer. Dr. Kemi, I'm going to throw this one at you. A lot of women are products of abusive homes and have moved on to see this as normal or expected, and or even as a sign of love. Is this a mental situation? You want me to repeat it? That women who are products of abusive homes, a lot of women are products of abusive homes because this abuse has gone on for so long in our culture. And they have even moved on to see this as normal or expected, or even as a sign of love. Is this a mental situation?
So what's happening in this situation is socialization. A lot of times when we talk about mental health and we talk about sexual violence in many families start at a very young age. So you're looking at violent environments where children as young as 2, which is actually the youngest that I've seen, well, 18 months now is the youngest that I've seen that has been violated.
Wow.
So you're looking at many families that have experienced grotesque acts of child sexual abuse from a very young age. Now, because you're socialized, as with any form of emotional, change, you become used to that, and you begin to assume that it's your norm. And like the lady rightly said that asked the question, many people then interpret that as a means of affection. Does it affect you? Absolutely. You may, in spite of it, have a semblance of what appears to be a normal life. But in many ways that you may not even appreciate, you're going to start showing manifestations of this abuse. You might, for example, be that particularly strict mother who doesn't allow any of her children out. And people might comment on the fact that, why is Kemi or why is Mrs. Z particularly strict with her children? You might be that mother that won't allow your children in the company of adults, regardless of the relationships they have. And so, although we tend to say that, oh, we are fine, and although sometimes when you speak to women that have had historically childhood violence that they never addressed, and they say, well, I'm okay now, the more time you spend speaking to them, and they begin to recognize that it has manifested in different ways and that they need to seek professional care. And it's never too late. There's never a right or wrong time for that. It's actually your time.
Thank you. So Tefe, I think this is a follow-up to the first question. Tayo KD is saying, since mental health, you say, is genetic, will it be advisable then to counsel a young girl in a relationship with a young man with a family of mental health history? Maybe not to marry that person. And how best can this be done?
Okay. Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you so much, Ma, for the question. Like I said, it's a combination of factors that come together. So you could have someone have a family history of mental illness and not come down with a mental illness. And I love what Mrs. Kemi said about, she described this situation where you may be functioning, but because of the abuse, the way you go about your life will be impacted. And that's why that kind of captures what I was talking about being mentally unhealthy, even though you don't necessarily have a mental illness. Because you are not adapting very well because of the abuse that you have experienced. So to that question in direct is that I wouldn't say don't. The stigma as regards mental illness is extremely is huge. When people just hear this person has a mental illness is huge. But then, like I said, you can have a diagnosed mental illness, but still go on to live a fantastic life, a well-adjusted life. So that in itself is not enough to say, I'm not going to get married to this person, because there can be family history of mental illness, but it may not just happen to the person, because there has to be a combination of factors, of genetics, of social issues, and then of psychological issues, all playing together for someone to manifest a mental illness. So it's not automatic. It's not just the presence of mental illness in the family automatically means that someone is going to have a mental illness. And then let me also quickly say this. It's also not that the absence of mental illness in a family doesn't mean the people are well adjusted either.
Okay, that's a good point to note. Olumide, I think you should answer this question from Falashadi. My friend's 6-year-old is becoming violent and having tantrums due to the lockdown. Yesterday, he broke a glass while crying that he'd like to see his friends once again. His mom is scared and doesn't know what to do, as scolding the child doesn't help at this point. Please, what do you advise? And I'm sure a lot of people are just really concerned, because you can imagine for children being cooped up for the past 2.5 months, all the excitement of going to school taken away from them, you know. So Olumide, what do you think such a mom should do?
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Z. For a 6-year-old, Mrs. Z, you nailed it, that, you know, now they're being confined. A 6-year-old likes to be expressive. They like to run around. They have a lot of energy. They want to express. They want to, you know, if you leave that 6-year-old, maybe if in an open space, you will see how the child will express him or herself. Now this child is having to deal with the fact that I can't go to school. I can't, even if they're staying, you know, maybe in a story building, I can't go downstairs. I can't see my friends, even the friends that live in, you know, in the flat downstairs, I can't see them. So it's a problem. It's not the only adults that are having to deal with the fact that there is, you know, restriction from movement, restriction from the things that they do before. So what I would advise is that it's possible to create activities that would engage this child. So you can let the child have maybe some time to play. Even if you have a big space within the house, if the child is going to, you know, run around, do crafts, games, things that will engage with physical activity to enable the child to be able to burn some energy. Another thing to do is to plan things around what the children can do. Structure is very important for children at this time. You need to, okay, they're doing online schooling now. They have to do maybe some chores, little chores, and all of that. Let them just know that there's a schedule around how they live their life, because they are used to being in a scheduled situation. They go to school, they know when it's time to go back home, they know when it's time, you know, to go to bed. So all of those things are turning around now, but we also have to be creative to make sure that we engage them. The child that is 6-year-old needs a lot of playtime. Just like we say, work is the business for adults, play business for children. Thank you.
Thank you, Olumide. I think that was very helpful. So, Abimbola, how do you build emotional resilience? How do you build, Fisaya would like to know, how do you build emotional resilience? Abimbola, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I thought I was still on mute. How do you build emotional resilience? First of all, whatever you're going through, you have to remember that you are stronger than how you think you are. You know, I'll narrate something. If somebody enters the pool, or if there's a negative aspect of maybe you fall into the water and you can't swim, we all have survival instincts within us, okay? Nobody was going to wait for something to come and happen to them. So within yourself, you have to first of all know that there's a lot that you can do within yourself, that you are stronger than how you see yourself. Once you do that, then you start to do things that will help you to think of the positive things that you need to take action in doing. The emotional strength that you have within you, giving you the right thoughts process to be able to handle everything that is between you, thinking about the now, the present, what is affecting me now? What do I need to do now? How do I need to engage in activities now? Another way of looking at it again is that once you understand your strengths, your weaknesses, then you focus on how your strength can be able to overcome your weaknesses. You have to be able to understand your own, be aware of your strength, know how to manage yourself, and know how to sit down and say, okay, what am I good in? What can I do on my own? How do I cope with this situation? Some people do breathing exercises when they're frantic. Like today, before this webinar, suddenly my website and what's it called? The
iPad.
Yes, my Wi-Fi just went off. I mean, yes, the normal thing is to get frantic, which I almost got to, but thank God for the fact that, look, I'm going to be the one talking today. So I needed to talk to myself that, look, you need to be on top of this. You have to find an alternative. So what we need to do is to talk to ourselves, you know, talk to your mind, talk to yourself and kind of affirm yourself. You know, say things that will make you know that this is not going to happen. I need to act this way. And it's something that we develop. It doesn't happen overnight. People have different ways of coping with different things. But if you know you're the kind of person that can handle a lot of things, you have to be able to sit down and think about how you will handle things based on the information you have about yourself, self-awareness, how you cope, and how you affirm yourself each time that you go through those situations.
Yeah. So that's how you build emotional resilience. Thank you, Bimbo.
Yes.
So Kemi, for younger girls, can we say that the poor or the lack of sex education in the home or support system contributes to them becoming abused girls in the home? Is that it?
I think when we talk about the reasons behind sexual violence and abuse of young girls, one of the concerns that we have is clearly the environment that we live in. The environment we live in is certainly an enabling one. A lot of times we use the term rape culture, and that very simply is just an environment that turns a blind eye, or worse, an environment that victim blames, as opposed to allowing a woman a platform to speak out and to be empowered enough to come forward with these allegations. You're in effect ostracizing her and causing her to feel guilty so she can't speak out against this. So in the home, more often than not, what we tend to find is parents are either incapable or do not necessarily feel it's important enough to speak to their children about scenarios of sex education, and of course violence against them. I think a lot of times what happens is when we look at our traditional cultural practices, children are usually and so when you have a child that is being abused that doesn't have an enabling home that she can speak about it, then sadly she doesn't get the necessary services that she should. It's very important to know when you speak to your children about these situations, and certainly starting from just basic sex education, but also to speak to them and not be worried about age appropriateness of it all. Sometimes you speak to parents and they say, oh, well, I can't talk to my children about terminology like penis and vagina because she's only 6. Well, the truth is that there is certainly child-appropriate language that you can speak to different children about at different ages. And I definitely would encourage all parents to sit down and have those conversations, no matter how embarrassing and sometimes difficult they are, with their children.
Great. Thank you, Kemi. Doc, I'm coming back to you, and I think it's an opportunity for you to please give us your own details. Somebody wants to know, how can I find a mental health professional for a family? So I think the Grace Hill is where you are going to send them, isn't it? So can we please have the details? And then the second question is, can antidepressants in any way help with correcting a mental health, maybe such as anxiety? So how can I find a mental health professional?
Okay, I'm going to give you, just call out the helpline, because following the pandemic and the social distancing and all that, we had to, of course, leverage on technology to do telepsychiatry. So we do a lot of consults now online. Some people say, is that sufficient? But I say, well, if you even come to the hospital, I'm not likely as a psychiatrist going to touch you per se. I'm going to still just have a conversation with you. So it's quite effective. Anyone that wants to reach out to us could call 070 125 19431.
Could you repeat it, please?
070 125 19431. Call, if you call that line, you'll be connected to someone to speak with you. Then the second question again,
Can antidepressants in any way help with correcting a mental health disorder?
Oh yes, yes. Because sometimes depression is not a defect in character. It's not because you are weak in character. It's a defect in chemistry. So you could have everything working for you. You could have, you could be a strong person as an individual. It's not like you're even weak or anything like that. But sometimes depression comes from within. So you have the person wondering, everything seems to be working. You know, I can't really place my head around why I am still depressed.
Well, thank you.
So not only in that situation, but antidepressants in chemistry.
I'm sorry, could you repeat yourself? You just said something. I didn't quite catch you.
I said depression is not a defect in character, it's a defect in chemistry. So yes, sometimes you need medications to address it, especially when it is moderate to severe. When it's mild, talk therapy is sufficient, but when it becomes moderate to severe, talk therapy may not suffice. You may need medication.
Okay. Olumide, I'm sort of searching around so that I get the right question for the right panelist. Ewoma Egedi would like to know, how can one, maybe he came in after you had spoken, because I think you've really answered this question, but maybe you can just summarize it quickly again. How can one protect their mental health as the source of livelihoods of most people, especially in the event industry, has been temporarily truncated due to this pandemic and bills are still the same? So how can somebody who their source of livelihood has been truncated, how can they protect their mental health?
Okay, thank you, Mrs. B. Yeah, so, I mean, in terms of where we are now, like I mentioned when I was talking, that we're going through a change process. And, you know, the change process is going through from shock to fear to acceptance and to transformation. So, quickly, I would like to say that, I mean, at this very stage where we all are, there's a lot of fear. People are shocked and not grappling with the reality of what has happened. And there's a lot of fear around. Now, the thing is to maybe begin to assess what has happened and the impact on business and what is possible and what is not possible. So when you have a reality check and you know what is possible now, if, okay, do we re-strategize? Do we need to be a part of the business? Do we need to? So that is acceptance that, oh, this has happened and we need to move forward. We need to, because there are bills. I mentioned, you know, loss of job. For the business owner is thinking, how am I going to pay my bill now? So it's going to be a period where you have to negotiate. Say, for instance, for staff, because business is not coming in, we don't have to come in every time. Maybe you have to come in twice a week. And also that also means that because we don't want to let people go, we're going to be paying 70% of the salary or 50%. So, you know, that's an acceptance and transformation. So when people that are working with the business owner hears that, they know that the business owner has heard them, also understand their own fears, and also is putting a solution forward, which they are also would able to buy into, because, you know, they're also afraid of loss of job and all of that. So I think when we go through that change process and we're able to accept, then the transformation will happen and there will be a kind of progress.
Thank you. Okay, to you, Bimbo, Chioma would like to know, how do you know, or how do you recognize and manage children? What are the sort of the triggers or the symptoms that you can see that will show you that maybe a child is having mental health issues during this period? How do you manage that? Because I know that you once ran a very big preschool, so I think that would be good for you.
Yes, like the person that spoke about the child that's very restless. You know, some children, like I said earlier, they pull their hair, okay? That might be a sign, okay? They're biting their fingers. And it's, I mean, like they said, mental health is about being productive, being happy, being joyous and everything. So something is going on. They might be biting their fingers, okay? They might just be cranky, just always crying all the time, okay? Some might be wetting their bed. Some might be wetting their bed. And some might just feel like always sleeping, you know, feeling weak and just sleeping all the time. Some might not even want to get up. They just want to be in their rooms. They just want to be alone. You know, they just want to be by themselves. Some might be afraid of the dark, okay? They might be afraid of the dark. Some might have nightmares. Maybe they're sleeping and you hear your child screaming. Do you understand it? There's something they're talking that is going on within them. So what we need to do as parents is to make sure that we show a lot of connection with them. We let them actually even ask them how they're feeling at this time. Because most times, children absorb things. They might not be able to express themselves. It's later in their adolescent years, you just see some kind of expression that you're wondering what happened. That we go back to COVID-19. What happened during that time? Were the parents always quarreling? Were they always shouting in the house? Were they always putting inside their house? So those are little signs that we might notice. So we need to talk to them, let us hear what they're saying, how they're feeling, and also we sharing our own thoughts to them. Lots of hugs are very important at this time. That connection, just look, I love you, you know, it's going to be okay. I know you like I said, pulling the hair, all those things are signs that we need to observe, and we need to be very, very observant at this time, you know, because it comes in different ways.
Excellent.
Anger.
The next, yes. Thank you, Bimbo. Thank you. The next question is for Dr. Kemi, and this is from Abiola Saneki. Hi, Abiola, because I know you're sending this all the way from Germany, so I'm really excited to see you here. So Abiola says, most abused women and children do not want to talk about it out of shame or some sense of loyalty to the abuser. How do you recognize the signs, and how can you get them to talk or seek help? So this is actually more or less the same question that was asked Bimbo about children. So how do you get, because, and that happens a lot. I mean, they love their husbands, even though he's beat them up, he says he's sorry, he begs them, they go back again. So how do you, you know, because of this sense of the shame, either they feel really ashamed that they're still in this marriage, or because they just feel loyal to this abuser. How do you recognize the signs, and how can you get them to talk, seek help?
So as Bimbo rightly said, when it comes to children, there's certain signs that you might start to notice in your child. A certain change of behavior, a pattern that perhaps is new. In the specific context of child sexual abuse, you might also start to observe that a child is reluctant to go to a particular adult. Perhaps a typical loving, happy child that you've asked to say hello to Uncle X, and this child is reticent and is unwilling to go and say hello. You might have a situation where you have young children that are inappropriately promiscuous in either their language or their activities. We also have situations of self-harming. You might notice, especially with the older children, that this is a child that spends all day in her room or his room, and that self-harming may be one of the concerns. Bimbo mentioned a laundry list of other signs that you may observe, like the bedwetting, dropping your school grades, for instance. This is a child that perhaps was doing very well at school, and suddenly you notice that this child is no longer engaged or willing to go to school. With women, what tends to happen is we hide it well. Our environment sadly encourages us to be more worried about the hypocrisy of a family name and the hypocrisy of a marriage than to actually be vulnerable and to address the issues that occur in our homes. So what we find in many instances is, as a good or close friend, you would probably be the first to observe a woman that is very mindful of perhaps what she says, especially around her spouse, if her spouse is indeed the abuser. You may observe that your happy, strong friend, when it comes into the environment that her husband is might suddenly change. You may notice perhaps what she wears, perhaps it's inappropriate, a sunny day, for instance, and you notice that she's in a scarf or she's wearing a long sleeve blouse and she's obviously uncomfortable, or she refuses to remove her jacket. I mean, the more stereotypic picture that we're all familiar with is sunglasses. When women come into environments with sunglasses because perhaps they have blackened eyes. Other signs that she may start to display is an unwillingness to engage in her previous social activities. Maybe once upon a time she was very friendly. Perhaps she had the girls' nights out, and then suddenly she's being told because she's worried about the impression that she's giving or what her husband would say. So when you have these signs of a particularly dominating or domineering partner, and you start to notice the changes in your friend, then you can start to ask those questions as to why. The assisting of a friend that refuses to speak out, your role as a friend is to be there and to actively listen. And when we say active listening, it's a little different from just listening to her, concerns. The truth is, we're very quick to address the concerns as we ask them. We're very quick to give suggestions that we think at that point in time may be beneficial to her. And it comes from a good place. But with active listening, we ask that, you remain silent. You allow her to tell you her story. You allow her to process her story. And as she tells you the story, perhaps she may not necessarily at that point in time need active intervention. But then your role at that point in time is to remind her that you're there and that you'll always be there. You'll be a consistent presence in her life for when she's ready.
Yeah, I like that word, active listening, because you tend to sort of think of listening as being a very passive thing. So you have to listen actively. Great, thank you, Kemi. Okay, back to you, Otefe.
Yeah.
Since Malik would like to know, he says, since the new normal will see the health industry going digital, what are the benefits and risks of delivering mental health care through technology instead of face-to-face? What impact does that removal of that face-to-face human interaction have, especially with, when we're talking about people with mental health conditions?
Well, everything has its pluses and of course its minuses. But for me, so far, it's been fantastic because now you could reach people in places where before now the limitation of access would have posed a challenge. You mentioned someone that called you all the way from Canada to talk about
yes.
someone in Ibadan and all that. So I got a call from someone in Abuja. In time past, you'll be frantic. So let's talk about the lockdown, for instance. Someone is going through a tough time when the lockdown was on, and he can't even the fear of going out. This way, the service can come to you where you are. So it has that advantage. And many people, counseling can be offered via telepsychiatry, therapy sessions can be offered via telepsychiatry. There will still be some situations where you can't handle it that way. That still remains. But I think what it actually, and this is new, it's new here, but not necessarily new in the Western world. I mean, a lot of people practice a lot of telepsychiatry because it allows them to go to places where you cannot even afford to have a psychiatrist. For example, here in Nigeria, we have very few numbers of psychiatrists, and many of them are concentrated in Lagos or in the western part of Nigeria. Now with this, you can have a psychiatrist in what they call the camps, the displacement camps. You could have that kind of service. These are places that normally you will not have people go to. So it has its pluses. For the physical contact, I wouldn't say, I mean, this, when Bimo talked about keeping relationship and keeping contacts and all that, this also allows for contact. I mean, having this kind of conversation. So it's not really, for me, it's not really a negative thing. If anything, it has spread the reach. And finally, for us, we have decided to also now pursue something called what we call the Grace Hill Online Substance Abuse Education and Treatment Program. which was something, and now this is something that has been practiced out there, but we are not big on it here. Quite a number of people struggle with their drug addiction, and then the average and the traditional drug treatment is to go into a rehab and spend a lot. So cost sometimes a limiting factor. With the online program, you can have more and more people come on. They are not yet very severe. Severe cases will still need to go into residential treatment, but there are people that are on the spectrum of abuse that can literally go on the program. That's the GOSATEP program, and then be educated on gas, what to do, relapse prevention, and all of that. Those are things that, so it creates a wider spread and is reaching out to people like we've never seen before. So it's a good thing. If
it's a good thing as well. Excellent. That was a great answer. So it's not something to be feared, and we can reach more people. Right. Olumide, this is a working mom, and she just, oh dear, her question just went. Okay, there it is. It's Adiola. And she says, the experience of online school has been quite stressful on the children and for the moms. And working from home has removed the usual work-life balance as we know it. So how do we manage this effect on our mental and psychological state? So it's a two-pronged question. You have the children who you were able to send them to school and not worry about their schooling, but now you're having to do their schooling with them online. You are working from home, so you're not going out to work and having your usual social life. So clearly, both the child and parent is going to be affected. So how do we manage the effect of this on our mental and psychological state? I would like to know that.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mrs. Z. So it will take us back one of the points that Bimbo made, which was emotional resilience. This is the time. So, we've talked about change, and these are the manifestation of the kinds of change that we will begin to experience. School is now not going to be physical. There are a lot of online schooling that is going on. So we will have to prepare our minds to know that, okay, this change has happened. The working mom also is experiencing it. And that's the fact that she also is not going out the way she used to go to her office. Now she has to do so. She has to build more capacity for herself. It might even be the working dad. It might have to build more capacity that will make them more resilient to be able to take care of the child. And that's why I said earlier on that you need to also create structure for the children. If you don't create structure, because the responsibility usually is with the teachers. When they go to school, the teachers take over all of that responsibility until they come back. But now, the parents are the ones that are doing that work. They are the ones that you will then need to structure how you want things. You need to make sure that all the things that the children need to do is structured while you are also structuring. And your response to the change is that you are building capacity to make sure that you are able to handle and not that. If you put structure, it would help you not to do things haphazardly, and it will help you reduce the amount of fear or the anxiety you will go through. So I think a lot of structure around how children schooling and other things within the house that has been added on. Now, parents are the ones that are doing the teachers are doing. So it's added responsibility for the parent. And so for you to be able to maintain your mental wellness, you also have to build some resilience and how to cope very well.
Okay, but the other part of the question, about because the parents are also working from home now. I mean, well, maybe it's the same answer that they too have to structure their time and make sure they're only working during working time. Because I think what typically tends to happen, especially with all these Zoom meetings, because you're not going out and getting into traffic, you're just giving yourself meeting after meeting after meeting. So maybe, parents just have to also try and structure themselves so that they have work and separate from home life. Or do you have anything else to add to that, Olumide?
Yes, Mrs. Z, you just rightly mentioned what it is, because, time management is important. So just the same way you will manage your time at work, and you will be able to say, I don't take this meeting. Can we move the meeting to also, if they're meeting Zoom, the Zoom app and all of that, you must be able to move some of the meetings. It is not very important. that also means thing, which is what I've just mentioned. You have to schedule your own time to as a working mom or a working dad to make sure that you are able to be effective and also be able to do work-life balance, the home and your work, even while working from home.
Okay, thanks. Bimbo, this is going to be quite an interesting question from Emilia. I hope you'll be able to answer her. She says, depression has been around before COVID, and for some people, shopping helps them to ease depression. So what is your advice for these people? See that the economy has been badly affected and following financial advice that people must reduce spending. So people who their shopping was their release, what do they do now? Bimbo, can you answer us, please?
Yes, I think it was it Olumide that said so, or somebody said that change is the only constant, right? And at this point in time, we have to make changes. Yes, I mean, COVID was around. I mean, a lot of people have even gone through things worse than COVID. Do you understand me? In their own private lives. But still, shopping is something that you enjoy, then there has to be an alternative to that. You have to think, what else can I do apart from shopping? What else can bring up my interest apart from shopping? You just need to find that out, because we need to readjust and think of other ways in which we can find joy, find our better relationships or whatever. So look for things. Maybe you want to go back to when you were much younger, the things that made you feel happy. Yes, go back to your childhood days. What were the things before you had the money that you have now to spend? What were the things that made you happy? So those are the things you need to readjust to. So forget about shopping right now, because many things that you have in your closet right now, maybe you even want to get rid of them. So look for other means. Yeah, look for other means that will give you that joy apart from shopping.
Anything you haven't worn in 2.5 months. When I was going for a meeting this morning, I could hardly wear my shoes because I haven't worn heels for so long. I just had to put on some slippers. So yeah, I thought that was an amusing question and that we should answer it because it might really be very relevant to somebody. Okay, back to Dr. Kemi. Usala wants to know, Kemi, so many statistics have been given about the potential fate of a lot of women as regards to abuse, and support systems like WARIF have been set up for this. But what are we saying or doing about our boys and men? The abuser of today or tomorrow is someone's son, brother, friend, etc. of yesterday. And I know you have the answer to that, Kemi. So what are we doing about our boys?
So absolutely right. Part of the conversation certainly involves men and boys. With regards to finding solutions to eradicating gender-based violence, it is critical that we involve the boys and the men. What we have done at the WARIF organization is we've designed and implemented special education programs specifically for the schoolboy. Reason being that we've identified that ages 12 to 16 is the most vulnerable time when it comes to addressing the issues of child sexual abuse. We talk about 1 in 4 girls in Nigeria. It's actually 1 in 10 boys that would actually have endured at least one violent form of sexual encounter before age 18 as well. So we have now started to implement this specific education program in secondary schools. The idea is very simple. With the use of mentors, we identify and appreciate that many boys have been socialized in homes of violence. And as you rightly said, Mrs. Z, these are boys that once you've been socialized, you don't know any better. So that becomes your norm. When you see your, when you see your father or your uncle or that school teacher strike a woman or is sexually violent against a woman and no one's correcting you, then when you grow up into adulthood, chances are that you're going to replicate the same acts. So by changing their narrative at that adolescent age and changing their mindset so they no longer have that toxic masculinity, those subliminal messages that keep telling them it's okay, it's all right to be an abuser, it's all right to abuse a young girl or a young woman, they're able to now change their narrative. So the idea is not to become a perpetrator in adulthood or to become a protector. And many of these programs have time and time again been shown to be effective. And I think with more education and more awareness, we will start to see again a reduction in the number of cases, not just from girls, but also from those perpetrated against the boys.
Fantastic. Yes, I knew you had a various intervention for the boys, which is why I was actually quite excited that question came, because there's no point us just saving the girls, but not teaching the boys and telling them that this is not right and this is not the way to behave. So it behoves on us as parents to make sure that we bring up our sons, to be supportive, kind men who understand that a woman is not to be hit and or to be sexually abused, and they're not objects of sex. So thank you for that, Kemi. This is going to be our last set of questions because our time has fast gone. We've learned so much. I found it so engaging. So Otefe, Fisaya would like to ask a question about the suicide rate as relates to youth. He says, suicide rate, especially amongst the youths, has increased over the years in Nigeria. Can you please explain the reason behind this as it relates to mental health? Otefe, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. So, okay. Well, the fact is that so the social pressures are increasing. That with the advent of social media, there's a lot of quite a number of people actually struggle with some form of unhealthy self-esteem, and sometimes the social media it has its pluses, but it also comes with a lot of pressure on young people. But also because of the social media, there's also some level of awareness now about these occurrences. Suicide is not necessarily a new thing, but in time past, people could take their life and it will be covered up, or we will not really hear about it. But now it's out there. I mean, people talk about it. So part of the increase that we see is also as a result of the fact that it's been talked about and it's out there. People can't, before you can cover it, someone else has put it out there and say this person died because he took their life. So that is there. And then there's there's also the pressure that comes with as we become more present on the social media space.
Yeah, I think that that really says it all. So Olumide, a quick question. How can Imo Obobo, I'm going to give you two questions in one because they're both short questions. Imo Obobo says, how can I help someone with a mental health problem like depression or anxiety? And Praise also said, how can you help your partner come out of depression? So I think it's the same question. How can I help someone with a mental health problem like depression or anxiety? Olumide, can you quickly give us a quick answer to that?
Thank you, Mrs. Z. So anxiety and depression, like Dr. DB said, they are the most common that we find around, and people are, coming to the hospital, to the different clinics for that. So apart from using the biological treatment, which is what Dr. DB talked about, antidepressants and all of that, you can also help your partner see a therapist, like a clinical psychologist that will teach, cognitive behavioral therapy. That's to help with the thought patterns, the negative thought patterns that, is causing the problems, the negative thoughts around maybe work, around maybe even COVID-19 that has just recently happened to the system, helping them create, how do you see things in the positive perspective? So that's what the therapy sessions will be. And just like Dr. DB also mentioned, if you're not in a very severe situation, it's easier for you to go and see your psychologist, who will take you through a therapy session of how, and for instance, someone that has a panic attack, helping them to learn different techniques, breathing techniques that would help them be able to cope when they have such things and be able to calm themselves down and be able to see how they can move forward from that. So some of the things that we do with the partner, that we also educate the partner, maybe the husband or the wife of the person that is going through that, so that they also know the big thing that they can do. And when it's beyond what they can do, then they can seek help. They can, call in to see the professional, and that would help them resolve. So it can be both combination psychological therapy, which can also involve you taking medication and doing the therapy at the same time. But it will be helpful for the partner also to be educated about signs and symptoms and what to do as a psychological first aid, help your partner when they're going through crisis.
Thank you. So, Bimbo, Joshua Adeloye would like to know, I don't know why the emphasis is on a married woman, but there must be a reason. He says, how can I help a married woman to be productive again after she lost her job 5 years ago? How can I help a married woman to be productive again after she lost her job 5 years ago? Bimbo, did you hear me? Are you there? Bimbo, did you hear? Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself, please. You need to unmute yourself. Yeah,
Can you
okay,
hear me
so
now?
start now.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you
Brilliant.
now.
I said the married woman must have some interests, some things that she's passionate about. Maybe we want to talk about passion first. She has to be able to identify the things that she really loves to do, and the things that has held her bound for 5 years she's put under the carpet. What are those things that she can bring out and start to do? And if it's not about passion, maybe it's about finances now. So we put the passion away and think, okay, what are the things that she can do at this point in time to bring in money? So one has to identify, is it for something to do or for the financing? So if it's the financing, it has to be, for finances, it has to be what is available for her at this point in time. What is available for her? Is it the job that she'll have to be like, because of the COVID now, there's some things that she'll have to do at home. Is she technology savvy? Is it something that she can do with technology? Is it something that she can do with her hands? Some skills that she has discovered. Maybe she even needs to do a bit of training, online training. So first of all, those are the things that she needs to brush herself up first. When she brushes herself up, then she decides that what is it that I am actually interested in. Because if she's not interested in something and she just does it, it will take a toll on her. So she has to discover what it is she's interested in, build her skills on what she's interested in, and start to look for things that she can start to do based on her interest. And if it's the financing, then it has to be something that she will do now, that she needs now, and to keep her going. So these are questions that need to be asked.
And asked, yes. So he can start off with asking her those questions, and then he'll know how to get the help. Okay, so back to Dr. Kemi for your final question. Are you there for me? Yeah, just trying to see your face. Yes. In just a sentence or two, what is the reason that a woman stays with an abusive partner? Why would you stay with somebody that puts your life in danger for the slightest reason?
Very simply, the environment. Nigeria is a patriarchal country. We're brought up to believe that as women, it's expected to be subjugated by men, regardless of whether there's physical or sexual violence. We have traditional cultural practices that are wonderful when they work, but unfortunately, some of these are harmful and only contribute to this situation. And women are not given enough platform to be able to go out there and do services. We're not a socialist country, for example. If she were to leave her home with, say, 4 children, she can't pick up the phone to find out whether she can get housing. So she would have to rely on relatives and family friends. And a lot of times she's built to be wary and to hide the fact that she has challenges in her home. So she's stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Wow, that's deep. Thank you. I just thought it was important to establish that. I really want to just thank the amazing panelists we've had today. And just before you all go, I just want each one of you to just say a sentence of, just give a word of hope or encouragement to somebody who might be out there, who's thinking, well, I've listened to all of you, I've heard a lot, but just give them just that one last line, that lifeline that can just help them through to the next season. So can I start with Great Doc?
Okay.
Okay, no, Dr. Tefe, there's that doctor.
Okay. So I've heard many people say this is our new normal, but I want to say that even though this is new for every one of us because we've not been here before, but history tells us that humanity has been through tough times like this, and we came through it. So I believe that history tells us there's nothing new under the sun. that we have not seen. So it's new, but hang in there, be productive, and keep your mental health healthy.
Olumide, what are you going to say to your professionals and business people in one sentence?
Okay, I would like to end with this. Over time, we've all, business people, health people, we train ourselves with the skills and we don't train our minds. Now is the time to train your mind, because we're in a situation where we're dealing with a lot of emotions. So it's good to train your mind now so that you will be able to hold yourself together, and so that you will not be in a place where you are grappling, gasping for breath to make sure that you stay alive. But so this is the time to train our minds, just the same way we have trained ourselves to develop a lot of skills. So train your mind and stay healthy this time.
Thank you, Olumide. Abimbola, the listener, the counselor, what's your one word of counsel for the people out there?
Okay, you are more powerful than you think. Always remember that. And only the people that care about you will hear you when you are quiet. So be around people that care about you. And one other sentence, Mrs. Z, I'm sorry. This is not the time. This is not the time to do pepper me, pepper them gang, or the time to say I better pass my neighbor. This is the time to think about yourself, what you need to do with yourself, how to manage the challenges that you are going through, and not to compare or compete. Thank you.
Right. So my fave, Dr. Kemi, what are you going to say?
Well, I'll start by saying to all survivors of sexual violence that you are not alone, that you have people around you that love you and care for you and will believe you and are there to assist. And I think for the rest of us, just to appreciate that from this pandemic, we will come through it better versions of ourselves and with our humanity intact.
Fantastic. So I'm going to reiterate what they've all said. Otefe says, hang in there. There's nothing new under the sun. We're going to get through this. Olumide says we should train our minds. Just as we train ourselves in our skills and other areas, train your mind for this time. Abimbola says that we are more powerful than we think we are, and we should stay around the people who care about us, who will be able to encourage us in that line. And Kevin says, you are not alone. So whether you're a victim of sexual abuse or you're just somebody who is suffering from the economic effects of this pandemic, you're not alone, and that we're going to get through this. And I will say, I am an eternal optimist that this too shall pass, and we shall return to our normal, not just stay in this new normal. This new normal, I mean, a lot of the things we have said today have shown us that there are some good things that have come out of this, and those good things will stay. But we're all going to come out stronger, better, richer in terms of our mind, our spirit, our humanity. And at the end of the day, we're just going to focus on the hope. So for everybody, focus on the comeback, not the setback. I want to say a huge thank you to you again, all of you. Otefe, thank you from the Grace Hill. I want to thank you, Olumide from Luth. I want to thank you, Abimbola from Bimbola Family Affairs, and Kemi from Warri. You have been amazing, and you have given us so much information, so much knowledge, so much hope and encouragement. And we'll see you all again. For our fantastic participants out there, we will see you all again at our next webinar. Thank you for not being tired of webinars and still coming to share with us, because we know that there's definitely webinar fatigue right now. So thank you again, everybody, and have an amazing rest of the day and lovely weekend.